This is the Nike AlphaFly Next Percent 2, and these are the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3. They're the latest super shoe offerings by both of these companies. They're both lightweight, highly cushioned, and fast on race day. So how do you know which one to buy? Well, that's the question that we're going to try to answer today, so be sure to stick around. Hi everybody, and welcome to the channel. I'm Tim, and this is Run Tall. If you're brand new here, welcome to the Run Tall family. I'm really glad you're here and that you found us on YouTube. Now, I post running shoe reviews, comparisons, and shoe battles every single week. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos that are about running, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. Now, before I get into it too far, I do want to get a disclosure out of the way. I did purchase both of these shoes with my own money, so there's absolutely no chance for bias. In terms of cost, the Nike AlphaFly Next Percent 2, they'll run you $275 US, while the Adios Pro 3 costs $250 US. There are times when I've been able to find the Adios Pro 3 on sale. I did pick up this version for $175 a few months ago. Now, while a $25 difference between the Nike Next Percent 2 and the Adios Pro 3 isn't insignificant, when you start getting up to that price range, that $250 to $300, I'm not sure that $25 one way or the other is really going to sway you one way or the other. I think where it does come into play is if the Adios Pro 3 turns out to be the right shoe for you, having them be $25 cheaper is kind of like icing on the cake. Now, to give you a little bit of context or background for this comparison, I used both of these shoes in exactly the same manner. I was running different marathon training blocks. Now, with the AlphaFly Next Percent 2, I was preparing for the Detroit Marathon. That's when I ran up the majority of the miles in these. And then in the Adios Pro 3, I was preparing to run the Boston Marathon that was held just this past April. Now, if you want to learn more about the 207 miles that I put on in these shoes for this comparison, or the 200 miles that I have in the Adios Pro 3, you can join me over on Strava. I'd love to connect with you there. Now, this video is not intended to be a full review of either shoe, but if you want to check that out, I have 100-mile full reviews for each of these already posted on the channel, and I'll put a card above that'll take you right there in case you want to go there first and then come back and watch this video. So let's start, and we'll talk about some of the basic stats of these shoes first. With the Nike AlphaFly Next Percent 2, on my scales for US men's size 9, they came in at 7.8 ounces or 212 grams. Now, I did reweigh both of these shoes from the initial time that I had reviewed them, and the Nike Next Percent 2 came in exactly the same weight, while the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3 did weigh slightly heavier than the very first time that I wore them. But again, I have 200 miles on these now, so I think there's a lot that can go into why these might weigh just slightly more than they did the initial time that I reviewed them. They came in at today's weight on my scales at 7.7 ounces or 218 grams. The midsole of the AlphaFly 2 is made up of Zoom X foam. They have 40 millimeters in the heel and 32 up in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. Embedded within the Zoom X foam is a carbon fiber plate, and they also have air units located up in the front of the shoe as well. With the Adios Pro 3, now they have their Light Strike Pro foam. They have a lot of it. They have 39.5 millimeters in the heel and 33 millimeters up in the forefoot for 6.5 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. These are our carbon assisted shoes, so they don't have a carbon fiber plate, but what they do have are energy rods. They have 5 of them that splay out that pretty much line up with your metatarsal bones on your foot that give you a nice, what I would call a suspension type feeling when you're running them. Okay, now that we got some of the basic stats out of the way, let's get into the heart of the video. And I'm going to start with the upper and the comfort and the fit, beginning with the AlphaFly Next Percent 2. Now, I have had issues with both of these shoes when it comes to the upper. Here, they're using an Atom Knit 2.0. It's a knit material that has a somewhat of a plastic or really quite rough feel to it. It's very durable. I haven't had any kinds of durability issues at all over the last 200 miles. In fact, if you look closely at it, you can't really see any changes in it. So there aren't any wears, there isn't any rips or tears, anything along those lines. It's a booty construction. I do like that. It's not without its issues, however. And the lace enclosure system is a bit unique. They have a lace that runs along the eyelet chain that your laces then that you use to cinch up the chain run through. And it helps to pull or gather that material together so you can get a really solid lockdown feeling in the shoe. It does cause a little bit of bunching up there at the start of the toe box. So my foot is not particularly wide. And because of that, I have to cinch, at least at the start of the lacing closure system, down pretty good. And it does create a bit of a bunching there, but I didn't have any kind of hot spots. It didn't cause any discomfort or pain because of that bunching. It's just more aesthetically, it's kind of sticking out there. The two areas where I have had some issues with these in terms of comfort is really at the top of the lace enclosure system. Now there's a bit of extra material up here, and it seems when I was cinching these down, I would get pain points right there. So I'd have a little bit of discomfort at the top. And then the other place where I've had some discomfort with the upper is in the heel on my Achilles. It did cause a little bit of chafing back there, at least initially. Now, the way that I was able to address that is I started using a product called Body Glide. I don't sell Body Glide. It's just one that I happen to find that works well for me. And what I did is I put a lot of that Body Glide on my Achilles, around my heel, and then up around my foot, pretty much everywhere that I thought that I might need it. And that did a good job of helping to eliminate some of those pain point issues that I had. And over time, I found that I could run in these really comfortably, but it took a while for me to get there. I think I was probably up around 60, 70 miles before I felt like I was running quite comfortably in the upper on these. But those are the two major areas that I had some concerns with, at least initially, in running in the AlphaFly Next Percent 2. With the Adios Pro 3 here, they have a single layer cellular mesh material. It also has somewhat of a plastic feel to it, but it's slightly different. It's not as translucent as what you'd have here, although I do feel like both were pretty cool on my feet. I didn't have any issues with my feet getting hot in either one of them. But I do think that this material is slightly thicker, maybe a little less breathable, but highly durable. Again, no issues in terms of durability for either shoe. When it comes to the upper, it just has held up fantastically well. They have a different type of a lace enclosure system here. It's not a booty construction like we have in the AlphaFly Next Percent 2. They do have a tongue that's awfully thin here. It's one of my major complaints about this shoe is just the tongue design, because it's so thin that I have trouble getting it to lie flat on my foot when I'm putting these shoes on. It just seems to want to really bunch up, so it takes a little extra effort. In fact, I almost have to unlace the lace enclosure system each time I go to put these on and make sure I'm tucking that tongue in so that it lays flat across my foot. Otherwise, it tends to want to bunch up. So that's one of the criticisms that I have of the tongue on this upper. And then also the lace enclosure system is slightly different. They have some loops here, and then they go into a more standard lace enclosure system. I did have some hot spots, or a hot spot anyway, on these shoes as well that caused me not to be able to run in them for a while. I ran in them back to back, and right up here where the lace enclosure system starts, that was pretty painful for me after running them a couple days in a row. So much so that I had to set them aside for a while and let that kind of calm down before I could put them back on again. When it comes to the heel, I have had no issues with that at all. Very comfortable back in the heel counter, so my Achilles rested in it quite nicely. So again, a couple different issues with each shoe, but slightly different. The pain points in the AlphaFly Next Percent 2 were up at the top of the lace enclosure, up the top of the lace enclosure system, and a little bit in the Achilles, while the Adios Pro 3 was really at the start of the lace enclosure system. Now, the adjustment that I made for the Adios Pro 3 in order to be able to run in these comfortably is what I found is I needed to leave the first 3 laces looser than what I normally would. So I didn't cinch them down tight to stay locked into the shoe. I left those snug, but not overly snug. And then basically the second half of the lace enclosure system is where I really started to cinch those laces down. And I did use the heel lock knot. Now, going with that method, it relieved the pain points that were up in the forefoot of the shoe that I was having initially when I was trying to run in these. And it made it comfortably enough to be able to run those 200 miles on, and I wouldn't have any issues at all picking these up on marathon race day. I'm hoping with the next version of the Adios Pro that maybe they change the start of that lace enclosure system, because I think what's happening for me is they've really set these eyelets, the first 2 anyway, a bit more shallow in the upper. I think if they were more in line with the rest of the eyelets, I wouldn't have had those pain points. Now, when it comes to both of these, if I was to pick which of the uppers that I enjoy the most, because I have had issues with each of them in terms of comfort, I think I'd go with the Adios Pro 3 overall. When it comes to the midsole, we have ZoomX foam along with the full-length carbon fiber plate and air units up in the forefoot of the AlphaFly Next Percent 2 versus the Lightstrike Pro foam and energy rods that we find in the Adios Pro 3. Both are highly cushioned, lots of energy return as you move through your gait cycle, but when it comes to overall comfort of the ride, I got to give it to the Adios Pro 3. They're just a more comfortable ride for me. I found them to be very soft and a little bit more forgiving because you have the individual energy rods that run along the metatarsal bones of your foot. So it's giving you a bit more of a suspension feel. Soft, cushioned, but with a lot of spring off the toe versus a more abrupt bounce. Again, it's still a highly cushioned shoe, don't get me wrong there. But the air units along with the full-length carbon fiber plate, you don't have quite that suspension feel. And again, it was a bit more of an abrupt bounce for me. Now, did that translate to being running at a faster pace? No, it really didn't. I found that these are really equivalent in terms of overall pace. So if you're looking for a faster shoe, these are going to be really, really close to one another. I couldn't find any real discernible difference between the two when I was doing my speed work. So in terms of overall comfort and ride, energy return, and all those types of things that come into play when you're thinking about your next marathon shoe, when it comes to the midsole, I got to give it to the Adios Pro 3. I would have no problem at all picking this up on race day. I have to say that both of these midsoles have held up really well over the last 200 miles. You can see some compression marks on that Zoom X foam, maybe a few more than what you can find on the Lightstrike Pro foam. So in terms of overall durability, I think that the Adios Pro 3 is going to go a few extra miles over and above what you might be able to get out of the AlphaFly Next Percent 2. So let's flip these shoes over and we'll take a look at the outsole and see how that's holding up and see how well it's protecting that midsole material that we just talked about. I'm going to start with the AlphaFly Next Percent 2. Now here you can see that they have rubber back in the heel area, a couple of strips there. And then basically from the midfoot all the way up through to where your toe off. I think it's doing a good job protecting the Zoom X foam, but you can see some signs of wear. But again, these have 200 miles on them. You can see the signs of wear here in the back in the groove area in the heel, in part because, and I didn't mention this before, I do feel like these are a bit softer landing in the heel. So I think you're getting a bit more of a squish, which is probably exposing a bit of that Zoom X foam to the ground contact, which is why it's now worn off. And you can see that it's taken the color right off. So now you can see the compression marks pretty easily. And then also up where they have the cutout where you can see the plate, the fly plate up here. There too, you can see some signs of wear as well, where that rubber isn't covering that Zoom X foam. But overall, I think it's done a pretty good job protecting all of that Zoom X foam that we just talked about. Now, if we take a look at the Adios Pro 3, here again, they have rubber in basically the same area. You got a couple strips here in the back where you're going to have some ground contact, and basically from the midfoot all the way up to where you toe off. They have continental rubber up here. I found it does a pretty good job sticking to some wet pavement or conditions. I think that they've done a better job protecting their Lightstrike Pro foam, because even though these have basically the exact same number of miles on them and they have rubber in the same areas, you don't see the same types of compression marks. You don't see the wear in the Lightstrike Pro foam here that you do in the AlphaFly Next Percent 2. So overall, I think in terms of durability of the rubber and protecting the midsole foam, the Adios Pro 3 does a slightly better job. So overall, while I had some comfort issues with the upper on both of these shoes initially, I did learn how to address those. Now with the AlphaFly Next Percent 2, you might recall that I used Body Glide on the areas that I was having some pressure or pain points back in the Achilles, and then up here at the top of the lace enclosure system, and that helped to address that issue. And then in the Adios Pro 3, I had pain or pressure points really at the start of the lace enclosure system, but not cinching those laces down quite so tightly, and then using the top half of the lace enclosure system to be able to get locked in and secure in the shoe worked for me. Overall, I'd be happy to run a marathon in either one of these shoes, but overall, if I had to pick between just one of them, I'm sure you probably guessed it by now, it'd be the Adios Pro 3. They're a more comfortable ride, they're soft, they're well cushioned, and they're fun to run in. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time, right here on Run Tall with Ted.